I had an ad on a personal dating website, and she responded to my ad. She did tell me up front that she was married, and of course she knew that I was single. However, she wasn't honest with her profession and her first name from the beginning, but that only lasted a few weeks, and finally she told me exactly who she was. The relationship lasted 2 years. No, we lived about an hour away from each other, and looking back on it, that was probably intentional on her part to keep the two lives separate from each other. The pros, of course, is what comes with any relationship: the closeness, the intimacy, the companionship, having someone to talk to every day, all day long, through text and messages, feeling like that you're accepted and loved, feeling like you're the only person that matters to them, feeling like you found your soulmate and that you'll live happily ever after. And the cons, well, there's plenty of cons, and they could actually outnumber the pros. In the beginning of a relationship, it's founded on lust and intimacy. But as a relationship continues, you want other things. You want that stability, and you want that companionship, daily companionship. And you start to realize that the relationship that you're building with the affair that they're having is built on sand, and there is no foundation. And that's when it starts to crumble. It usually takes about 6 months to a year for that to start to happen. And you start feeling like you're second class citizen. And there will be Christmases that go by, your birthday will go by, holidays, and they'll be in their married home. They'll be with their spouses, parents or grandparents that they might even still have a great relationship with, kids if they have them. So yes, there are plenty of cons, and you start to have insecurities and self-doubts, and you start to feel like a mistress, and that you're not valued and you're not appreciated. We would physically see each other at least twice, sometimes 3 times a month. I would go over to where she lived and get a hotel, and she would spend about 2 or 3 hours with me after work, or sometimes she would come see me and spend a few hours with me. And there were a few overnights, but they were more just seeing each other for 2 or 3 hours. And that got old after a while. We would communicate sometimes all day long through text on the phone. And we would use an app called Kik, K-I-K. It's basically a text app that you would use that's separate from your phone text messages. And now looking back at it, it's sort of a telltale sign that she's done this before, because she's the one that recommended it. Yes, absolutely. From the get-go, she did say that he was neglectful, that he would drink every night, that she was going to leave him, and that he hadn't been intimate with her in over a year. So we justify in our minds, why it's okay to be with a married person. And the person that's cheating on their spouse, will give you 100 reasons why that the marriage will end, and why it's the right thing to do to continue to have the affair. But, I am a Christian, and biblically it's wrong. It's against the Ten Commandments. And the further the relationship goes, the more you start to feel guilty about it. And you start to actually feel bad for their partner, that they keep being lied to. And so, yes, it does, and it does weigh on you after a while. Negative things started happening to me with my health, my vehicle, and it was almost like there was some bad curse that I was continuing to see a married person, a married woman. And so, absolutely, I had moral regrets, and I still do to this day. I would say I fell in love with her the first night. The first night we were intimate, and I told her about a month later that I was in love with her. The next time we saw each other, she told me that she was in love with me. But love is a perspective, and people don't see love and they don't love the same way. What one person would consider love is different than what someone else would. Yes, absolutely. I thought we would be together forever. And we would talk to each other and say those words every week a few times. We would use the word forever. And I had every intention of moving down there when she divorced her husband. And she talked about moving down here, maybe, possibly, and being with me. Do I think that she had the same feelings, that she actually believed that she would be with me forever? I think a part of her, yes. I think a part of her had the illusion that she would be with me forever. But that was to make it more, the relationship more enjoyable. I think part of her was lying to herself just to make her feel that intimacy and to make me believe that intimacy and that we would be together forever. So I think it's half and half. I think part of her really wanted to and believed it, but also a part of her knew, hey, I probably, I've done this before and this will run its course and eventually my life will be too complicated for him and he's not going to be around while I'm still with my husband. No, I never seen any of her friends, her family, or was any part of her life in the quote unquote real world, her married life. And she never met my family. And I think that was intentional on her part. I think she kept it separate. I think she learned to keep it separate in case or when the relationship would to end. And looking back on it now, it was a telltale sign to me that she kept those lives separate in order that they wouldn't interfere with each other and that eventually the relationship would end. It didn't appear to me that she even cared if her husband found out about the relationship, the affair. Um, and maybe she was just doing that for self-protection. I don't know. But yes, there were signs that the relationship was dragging and that she was having doubts about us. A few things like she blew off my birthday and said that she sent a card when she didn't and then gave it to me later. A few months back, I got sick and she didn't visit me in the hospital. I realized that things were hectic at her married home and that she couldn't, but she didn't see me for like a month after that. And she was really, really distant. And I noticed when she would come into my home, she would look at my family pictures. I would have family pictures on the wall of my grandparents, my parents, my relatives, and she showed zero interest in them. I guarantee you, she couldn't even tell me where my mom worked. She couldn't tell me anything about my history, about my college or the school that I went to. And when someone like that shows little interest in your family, it's almost like that they don't have any long-term goal of being with you, like they couldn't care less. Um, so yeah, things were starting to come loose at the seams in the relationship. There were other things. She would be evasive about talking long term with me or be very vague when it came to, what our relationship would be like in a year or two. She basically told me that it's not in the timeline to leave her husband just yet. And that is a telltale sign that she just sees you as temporary. And she would slip up and say things that would be very domestic or very long term about her husband, like getting the life insurance on him, jacked up because he was drinking. So, if you plan to leave somebody, you don't make plans with them. Um, so there were there were things, and you want to listen to your voice. Your logical brain is giving you warning signs that, hey, this is not long term. How did it end? Well, her husband went into a 30-day rehab for alcoholism, and I noticed like the very last week, right before he was coming out, I think she went to go visit him, and he was sober. And she told me that he was sober for the first time in years, and that she saw a little bit of the old him. And of course, I freak out, not to her, but in my brain, I'm like, well, you need to stay very close to me when he comes home because I'm going to start having insecurity issues. And she did the exact opposite. She wasn't communicating at all. And it was almost like she was nitpicking and finding something about my conversation that she thought was grossly inappropriate. And in fact, it wasn't. Um, I was calm and cool the whole time. And it was almost like that she created a fight and an argument between us that didn't exist. I tried to call her a couple of times. She never returned my call. We would text, but, we're used to talking and texting like all day long, sometimes hours. And it would be like drops of water. She would communicate like once, I would respond, and then she wouldn't respond to me for another 7, 8 hours or to the next day. So it was almost like she was avoiding conflict, and she wasn't having any respect for me. And this just happened, during the whole month of December. Our 2-year anniversary came and went. Um, we were going to meet up, and she blew that off and said that things are just too complicated in her life. Christmas came and went. We had very little communication. And finally, I texted her and I'm like, are you trying to make things work with your husband? And she's like, no, I'm just trying to be his friend. And it went on until the new year. I tried to call her at New Year's. She didn't respond. And eventually she just called me toxic. She said I was toxic. She said she was going to block my number. And I didn't go off on her. I just eventually stopped all communication. She said something, and then I haven't talked to her since. And it's been a couple of months, so it is definitely over. Initially, I was angry, but a lot of times anger is just pain turned inside out. And I was feeling a lot of pain and hurt and rejection. But I started to think logically and realizing that, hey, I got myself into this. I knew I was dating a married woman. I knew that this could eventually happen. And it's not her that I should be angry at or hurt at. If there's anybody to be angry at, it should be me for getting into a relationship with a married woman. So I knew what the consequences were when I rolled the dice. And I knew the pros, and I knew this could happen. I knew the cons. And so, no, I'm not angry at her anymore. Well, I wouldn't date a married woman again, knowing what I know and what I learned from this. But would I do this relationship over again? Absolutely. Let's don't lie to ourselves. Even if it's an affair, there's that connection, there's that love, there's that bond, there's that acceptance. And the first year that I was with her and she was with me, it was the greatest year of my life. And I could still say that to this day. It was the greatest year of my life. What she gave me. It built my confidence. It made me feel like a man. I felt so good about myself. I felt attractive. And I feel like it's made me a better person. So no, I wouldn't change that I had a relationship with her. And but being that said, I wouldn't do it again because I'm not going to relive that rejection again. And the time that you're spending with a married woman or a married man, you could be building a real relationship built on stone, something that can be long lasting. The time that I was with her, it was great. But what if I had found someone that really loved me or that I could be with forever, but I missed that opportunity by being with a married woman? So no, I would not be in a married relationship again, ever again. And plus it made me feel bad, made me feel slimy to being with another man's wife. Uh, and it made it harder to look into the mirror. So no, I don't regret the relationship that I was in, but I would not do it with another person. I've learned not to do it. Do not be in a relationship with a married person. And if you are in a relationship with a married person, try to find the strength to get out of it. And I know that's a lot easier said than done because the first year I wouldn't have had that strength to leave her. No way. That's the main point is what I learned. And like Dr. Phil says, if they'll do it with you, they'll do it to you. And I think the statistics are like 2% of affairs end up with a divorce and then you marrying that person. 2%. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that there wasn't great things about it, that I didn't feel loved and that I didn't enjoy the intimacy. I did. But there are diminishing returns to affairs, just like anything else in life. All these negative things could happen. You know, you might be with someone whose spouse comes to seek revenge on you, your reputation, multiple things. Let's say you did end up in a relationship and you marry this person. You would always have that in the back of the mind that they're going to cheat on you next. So these are the negative things. And, don't glean the fields. If you've enjoyed this relationship and it starts getting bad and you've been in it for a year, man, think about getting out of it. Think about getting out of it because most likely it'll go downhill from here. And God forbid you have a child with this person. And now you're responsible for 18 plus years of child support payments. Or worse yet, you're trying to be with your child that you had with her. And now they're giving you problems or they're not letting you see them. That could be a nightmare in itself. Yes, I have tons of advice. First, don't succumb to the temptation to get revenge on your ex-lover. Don't try to contact their husband or their wife to inform them about the affair. There's a good chance that their partner already knows about the affair, but are just blindly ignoring it, subconsciously or consciously. So, and plus, you want to be the bigger person, and you want to gain and keep as much dignity and pride for yourself after the situation has ended. And the best revenge is to live a happy life. So if you really want to seek revenge, which I hope you don't, living a happy life and moving on quickly and not contacting the person ever again is the ultimate satisfaction. Because then they'll start thinking, wow, I'll let someone really good go. He's not bothering me. He's not trying to force being with me. So don't be that person, and don't be the person that begs and whines and say, "Oh, can you please take me back?" And if they did take you back, it would just get worse from here. They'll abuse you even further. Like Dr. Phil says, you teach people how to treat you. So don't give in to that temptation to try to win your partner back because it'll only go downhill from there. Secondly, I would recommend looking at the good things about your partner and about the relationship. Pick out 2 or 3 good moments that you had in that affair and that relationship, and focus on them, and focus on how happy that person made you, instead of thinking about how it ended and the worst things. And it'll put a smile on your face. And then close that door, because with every venture that we have, whether that be business or relationships, everything ends. I mean, that's the fact of life. Everything has a bell curve. And so try to glean the good things that came out of it, and then shut the door. And just every time you look back at it, at the relationship, think about it with a smile, and about how you've grown as a person, and how you've learned not to do that again or make that same mistake, and how that person did, love you in their own way. They did love you, and they did deem qualities in you that they found that they wanted to be with, even if it was for a few short months or a few hours every week or whatever. Also, remember what I said earlier in this interview about love being perception, and it means something different to different people. I learned from this relationship, this affair, that love is just as much about action in what you do than what you say. Because someone could tell you that they love you all day, but if their actions show something different, then it's not love. And so with the partner that you're having an affair with, or they're having an affair with you, don't listen to what they say necessarily. Watch what they do. See how they treat you. Will they come visit you when you're in the hospital? Will they send you a card for Christmas? And will they put their current relationship that they're married in before you? And if they are, then most likely they don't really love you, or they don't love you the way you need to be loved. And so I would definitely take that in consideration when being with somebody. And the one thing that we do know is that the person that's having an affair with you is lying to their married partner. And so what does that say about them? They're lying in order to get what they want, a relationship with you. So, of course, they're going to eventually lie to you to get what they want, and to tell you that they're about to break up with their husband or their wife, or that they're an alcoholic, or that they haven't been intimate with them for a year. They're going to lie and say whatever it takes to get what they want out of you. This woman that I was with was my 10. She was my 10 of all 10s as far as physical attractiveness. And yes, she was sweet, and she was nice inside, especially in the beginning of the relationship. But I've also learned that beauty is inside. You can have the most beautiful person on the inside and just average and dull on the outside, but they become beautiful because of who they are on the inside. And then vice versa. You can have the most beautiful person on the outside, and they're horrible people on the inside, and they just start to look ugly. Things aren't black and white, and neither was this relationship. She did have good things in the inside, but the physical starts to diminish when the lies start adding up, and you start to see the person for who they really are.